Hi, this is Cypher, and in this video we're going to be looking at where I'm going to put my baseboard and just very briefly how the baseboard was put together. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because how baseboards are put together and you do your bench work is entirely up to the space, the location, where you're actually going to put it. Some are mounted to the wall, some are freestanding on the floor, others are balanced precariously like mine and screwed into bits and pieces. So all I'm going to do is have a very quick look. So just starting off with a few pictures, this is where my baseboard is going to go. It's basically going to be sitting across the top of my desk area, which is my work area here, and it's going to extend across to this little CD cabinet. So there'll be a piece of wood at the side here that it's going to be mounted to. This is going to be the area that I've got. Now, I've decided to do it in my workroom, even though I've had to shrink down the size of the layout significantly, but I've decided to do it in here rather than the loft for a couple of key reasons. One, we had a very hot summer last year, and I actually had some metal items up there, some old track and stuff that started to deform, and when I was getting things out of the loft, they were quite warm, and I was concerned about metal and plastic sort of warping. And then over the winter I went up and it was really cold. We've had a prolonged cold period here in the UK. It was really cold up there, but worse, where I'd actually put down some plain wood sheets for where the base wall was going to be going when I was planning this out last year. We've had some condensation in the loft, and some of that has dripped off with the felt onto those boards and actually warped the boards and caused some water damage. So the last thing I want to do is to put a lot of time and effort and money into building a layout and then find that I get it water damaged. So that was really the deciding factor. Let's get it down indoors, make it smaller, make it really good, and just keep it out of the loft area. So that's the reason why it's going to be in this location. Some of the tools that you need to build your baseboard, obviously it's useful to have your track plan with you, and this did change slightly between now and when I was building the baseboard, but the size of the baseboard is still the same. I've got a mitre saw here, a decent mitre saw, invaluable for this sort of thing. The Wizard, I wish I hadn't used that. I was using that to drill a few of the holes and it wasn't up to it and actually broke while I was building the board, which is a bit of a pain. A pencil, tape measure. I've got a screwdriver there for obviously putting the screws in, and I swapped out the Wizard for a proper drill, so countersink for the screws, and obviously the wood. And some of the wood that I was using was pre-cut by B&Q. For instance, the 9mm MDF for the main part of the baseboard and the 6mm MDF that's going to go at the back for the back seam was all pre-cut by B&Q. I found it easier to buy large sheets and then go and get them to actually chop those up. Really nice straight edges, and it's really made life an awful lot easier. And then my 4x1 and my little bracing bits and pieces, I measured those out and cut those, and then some little triangular pieces for the corners. So I then started just to drill some pilot holes in the timber. I always drill pilot holes rather than just drilling the screws in because it tends to split. I've also used some no-nails to give it even more strength, and then added into there these little triangular corner bracing parts, and then stuck those and screwed them at the back onto the baseboard. So I've got screws at the back into this glued area, and then screws through the baseboard into this bracing, and I've got 4x1 all the way around the edges. Obviously once it's done, sand it down. Sandpaper is useful to have. And then we'll just put it into place. So I'll get the video out now, and we'll have a look using the video. The cork matting I got is from Jarvis, and it's just wide enough to go across the layout. So I'll just show you how I went about just cutting that, because I did make a few mistakes with the first one. I'll just show you how I went about the second one. Okay, so literally all I'm using for this is a long metal rule and a sharp Stanley knife blade. And the first thing that we will do is to roll out the cork, and what I'm doing is I'm rolling it out so that the curved side is downwards, so it doesn't sort of curl up at the edges, it pushes down into the baseboard. And because I'm using complete sheets here, I'm hoping that this is going to line up quite nicely because it's got some good straight edges on it. And I'm not too worried about going right the way up to the edges of the baseboard, because obviously I'm going to have scenery. The main track area is going to be in the middle here, so it doesn't have to be absolutely millimetre perfect. But it'd be nice to get a decent straight edge if we can. So just coming up onto the baseboard, what I then did is use the steel rule, elbows just holding it down, take the steel rule into the wooden batten there, and then just fold that over just to make sure that it's reasonably straight. Like I said, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Just take your time on this to try and just get a small crease in the cork. This area at the back here is being a little bit fiddly. Take the rule away and then just ease that in, so you're getting a nice crease in the cork sheet along the batten. Just check it along the front edge, make sure everything is all lined up, and we're happy. I think that's reasonably okay. And then what I did is just took my metal rule back in. It gives you the opportunity then to push that into this this batten here. This is all very sturdy. Using the 4x1 has definitely been a good choice. I don't want to put too much weight on it, but it's pretty solid. And then take your Stanley knife, be very careful with knives, not too much of an angle, nice and sharp, and then just run that along the back of the ruler through the cork sheet. Now this knife unfortunately is not quite as sharp as I would have liked. And if we keep coming along, keep the ruler into the batten. Using the ruler means that you're going to get a relatively straight edge on the piece that you want to keep on the layout. So if it does rip, it's likely to rip on the piece that you might be using elsewhere, but ideally the piece that you are going to be discarding, so this piece here. Leave the ruler in place, literally just lift it up, and if you've perforated that properly, then you get a nice piece of cork sheet that you can use again a little bit later. Then all you need to do is, if you want to, just pick off these little bits at the back. I'm going to have some scenery here, so I'm not worried about that. But then I've got a nice piece of cork sheet that is cut to the size for my layout, and that's actually gone in there really nicely. And I'll just need to do another sheet at the back. So that's how I went about cutting my cork sheet, and then I'll be putting some sealant down and then gluing this down with some boxes on the top, or some books or magazines or something to hold that down. Okay, so I've laid the first piece of cork, and I've put some magazines down and some books just to weight that down. And one of the main reasons for doing this video is so that people can learn from my mistakes, and I've already made one. I learnt a lot laying that first piece of cork, but remember, I'm breaking my board up here, and I'm about a millimetre or two of the cork goes over. So really what I would have been better off doing would be to have laid the cork here and then laid it into the wall at the end. I didn't do that, so we're just going to have to work with that. So I've changed the blade in my knife, so I've got a nice fresh sharp blade in there, and what I'm going to do is lay this piece of cork, and then I'm going to try and just trim this off to get it as straight as I can using the steel rule, so that the other bit will butt up there. So first lesson of the day, think about where your brakes are on your board, and you know, work with those rather than working against them like I've done. So one of the things I learnt with the other one was just to roll this cork back. Once you've dry laid it, so you know where it's going, roll the cork back to the beginning where you're going to start sticking it, because that makes it a lot easier to offer this edge up and then roll this back over the glue. The other thing I started to do was to glue a piece and roll, and I found that was quite difficult, because trying to glue while this is moving backwards and forwards was a bit of a pain. So what I've done is I've got a mark there so I know where the glue is going to go to. I'm going to grab my pot of glue and very quickly just work this in to the baseboard. Now this goes quite tacky quite quickly, so I need to work fairly quickly. I'm not too worried if it goes over the cork that I've already laid, because that's just going to really sort of seal the edge for me. I'm just going to very quickly, using this brush, make sure you got plenty of glue around the edges so you get a good seal on the edges. That's all important. So what I tend to do is just go around the edges, just going up the back a little bit to make sure the glue is all around there. And, oops, let's move that piece of wood out of the way, we don't need that anymore. Okay, let's just keep working this in. The key thing here with this glue is just to keep on working it as quickly as you can and getting a nice even texture across. If you pick up any little bits of cork that have come off, then just take those out of the glue and then just go back over where that glue needs to be, and just work this in fairly quickly so that you can get the cork down before it goes tacky. Now, I'm going to be a couple of minutes doing this, so I'm just going to turn the camera off and I'll come back to you once I've actually got this bit done. So we will take our cork and we'll very carefully butt that up to the cork that is already laid, making sure that we try and get that as near to the edge of the baseboard where it's required. Just push that in. I appreciate you can't see this in the camera, but I'm just butting this up to the cork that is there, making sure that we've got a nice even join there, and then just gently circular motions without roughing up the cork. Just smooth that down all the way over. Smoothing that down as you go along. Now you could use a towel or a cloth or something. I prefer to use my hand to do this, so that I can guide it more closely, and I can also pick up any ripples that are in the cork and just try and get rid of those ripples as I'm going along. Now I've got a nice join there. It's nice and tacky, so this has actually gone down really nicely. This Unibond is not the cheapest sealant and glue stuff on the market. There are cheaper options, but I tend to sometimes like to go with a premium brand because you often get it nice and smooth, and I haven't diluted it or anything. I've just straight out of the tin so that I get a really nice covering. just reach for some more magazines and make sure they're old ones. You don't care if they get any glue on them or if they get messed up. And we just lay those down across the cork just to keep some weight on it, keep the cork board nicely pressed down. So again, this is the Unibond super adhesive and sealer that I've used. Quite like that, it's gone on very well. Haven't needed to use too much for this area. And this is the area where I've got that problem where the baseboard is just slightly forwards of the edge of the cork. So what I want to do here is just to offer the steel rule up. I'm going to do it on this side of the cork. It should be just about there. Hold that down really tight, bring the knife in, and then keeping that straight, pushing down into the baseboard. We just run the knife along the edge really nice and slowly, moving your fingers to make sure that the steel rule doesn't move. Should have pretty decent edge along there. I think I'm pretty much along the edge of the baseboard. Might be slightly out, but it's pretty much there where the track section is going to go, which I'm going to be okay with. I came in slightly at that edge there, but on the whole, reasonably pleased with that. So steel rule is one of the more important bits of kit that I've got in my toolbox. I use it all the time for straight edges rather than trying to guess things or run things down edges of boards or bits of wood. I find the steel rule is really useful. So I'm going to go ahead, I've already cut this piece and I'm going to do the same process to put the last piece of cork board down on this side. More magazines, and then that will be left overnight to really go off. So this is the cork now completed on the baseboard. You can see a slightly darker line there where the sealer is still drying, just where the two cork areas meet. I'll explain why I've got this piece of track on here in a moment. But that's gone down quite nicely. It's given me a really smooth finish that I can work on right the way across the board. Now I'm only working on a fairly small area. For those of you that are maybe working in 00 with a much larger gauge, then what most people tend to do, if I come in close here, is they tend to use just a narrow strip of the cork, slightly more than this probably. This is just an offcut that I've used, so I'll just move this over. And you use small strips of the cork across your baseboard and mount your track on that, and obviously that then reduces the cost of actually buying the cork. I've chosen to do the whole of my board because I got a good price on my cork sheets. I was quite lucky, but this is the way that quite a lot of people will put their track on the cork. The cork is used to deaden the sound of the trains going over the track, and having this little step up, it's very small on an N gauge. With a 00 you'll probably have a slightly deeper cork bed, but you've got a slight ridge here, so when your ballast goes in it gives you a little bit more of a quite a realistic look. I wasn't too interested in that on my particular layout. I just wanted to get a real nice base that I can work on. Now I have googled around, and I'm a bit of a quandary because I'm not really getting a decisive yes or no. The cork at the moment is not sealed, so it's nice and smooth, but it is a bit rough, and I'm rubbing my hand over it, then you'll find that it might pick up. And the other thing is, if I drop anything on it or dig anything into it, then it could quite easily crack. So what I've decided to do is leave it overnight, and then I'm going to use a diluted mixture of the glue sealant, and I'm going to paint all the way over the whole of the cork layer, so that it's going to really nicely seal that off and give me a really nice base for my board that I can work on. And then the next step will be obviously to bring in some sort of back seam to go across the back, and then in this area here I'm going to be having sort of a ridge or embankment, some scenery that's going to cover this piece of wood, so I'm not too worried about that piece of wood showing there. So once I've done that, then obviously I just need to do the get the front fascia onto the front here, and probably have my panel here. I haven't quite decided how all that's working, and over the back there I've got a little bit more to raise so that I can have some scenery on top of the fiddle yard. So there's a bit more to do on the baseboard, and I'll just cover that off in a final quick video once I've got that finished.